Picture this: you walking the dog, heading to work, popping to the shops, whatever. You glance up at the sky and notice white lines stretching from horizon to horizon. Not one, but dozens, crisscrossing above your head like someone is playing tic-tac-toe with the atmosphere. Now imagine discovering those lines aren't harmless condensation from aircrafts. Imagine discovering their chemicals. Imagine discovering they've been spraying them over your head for 30 years.
Imagine looking up and discovering clouds.
See, that's exactly what they want you to think.
Who?
Them.
Yes, them. The most powerful organization in conspiracy history. Just them.
Today's episode is Chemtrails.
Yes, the conspiracy theory where every pilot, airport worker, aircraft engineer, meteorologist, baggage handler, air traffic controller, and probably the bloke selling Toblerones in duty free has somehow managed to keep the same secret for decades.
Or have they?
We're 30 seconds in. 30 seconds.
Millions of people around the world believe aircraft are secretly spraying chemicals into the atmosphere. Some say it's population control, some say it's weather manipulation, some say it's mind control. And some say it's all part of a global program so secret that even the people involved don't know they are involved.
And some people think Elvis works in a Tesco Express.
The thing is, look, this conspiracy refuses to die. No matter how many scientists debunk it, people keep looking up and they keep asking questions.
Mainly because the sky looks weird.
Exactly. Because while scientists insist chemtrails aren't real, governments have experimented with weather modification. The military has played around with cloud seeding. Scientists have openly discussed spraying particles into the atmosphere to cool the planet. And suddenly, the line between conspiracy theory and reality starts getting a little blurry.
Not blurry enough to start licking aeroplane exhausts.
That's going on a t-shirt.
Please don't make that a t-shirt.
Tonight, we're diving headfirst into one of the most controversial conspiracy theories on Earth. Are chemtrails evidence of a massive secret operation happening right above our heads? Or is this one giant misunderstanding that got completely out of control?
And more importantly, if they're controlling minds from the sky, why haven't they stopped me buying ridiculous amounts of takeaway food?
Because some things are beyond even government technology.
Fair. Grab your tinfoil hats and your meteorology textbooks. Welcome to Mindzilla.
Let's start with the basics. If you've somehow avoided this conspiracy for the last 20 years, chemtrails are the belief that aircrafts are secretly spraying chemicals into the atmosphere. Not advertising banners, not fuel exhaust, not ordinary condensation, chemicals. Deliberately. For reasons that range from slightly concerning to absolutely bonkers.
And just to clarify, by slightly concerning, you mean weather control. And by absolutely bonkers, you mean lizard people turning us into obedient vegetable-eating zombies.
That's surprisingly specific.
I've met your internet friends. Now, according to mainstream science, those white lines behind planes are called contrails, short for condensation trails. Aircraft engines release hot exhaust. The exhaust hits cold air at high altitude. Water vapor condenses. A white trail appears. Simple. Case closed. Everyone go home. Sounds reasonable.
Except chemtrail believers say there's one big problem. Some trails disappear quickly. Others hang around for hours.
Weather.
Or spraying.
We're not even 5 minutes into the episode.
Believers point to photographs showing trails that spread out and slowly become thin, cloud-like layers. They ask, if these are all just contrails, why do some vanish in seconds while others remain all day?
Because weather exists.
That's the official answer. Humidity, temperature, atmospheric conditions. But for many believers, that explanation feels too convenient. Then we get to the sky grids. This is where a lot of people first become suspicious. You look up and see aircraft trails crossing each other. Perfect lines, perfect angles, huge checkerboard patterns stretching across the sky.
Or, as pilots call it, air traffic.
Or evidence.
You can make anything sound suspicious if you say it dramatic enough.
Can I?
Go on.
The toaster knows when you sleep.
Right, fair point.
Now, this is where things start getting really interesting because chemtrails believers don't think planes are spraying just one thing. They think they're spraying all sorts. The three substances most commonly mentioned are aluminium, barium, and strontium.
Which sounds less like a government program and more like a rejected Marvel villain. Believers claim soil samples, rainwater samples, and air tests have shown unusual concentrations of these materials. Scientists dispute those interpretations and argue the samples don't demonstrate a secret spraying operation. But those claims continue to circulate all over the internet and every Facebook group with a profile picture of an eagle.
One of the oldest chemtrail theories is population control, the idea that chemicals are being dispersed to make people weaker, sicker, and more compliant.
And somehow nobody noticed millions of aircraft secretly carrying enough chemicals to affect entire countries.
That's exactly what skeptics ask. Believers respond by saying, maybe that's because the operation is designed not to be noticed. Then we have weather control. This is where things become fascinating. Because unlike many conspiracies, governments genuinely have experimented with weather modification.
Careful, the listeners just sat upright.
Cloud seeding exists. Weather modification projects have existed. Military weather experiments have existed. We'll get into that later. That's enough to ask if governments have already experimented with weather, how do we know they stopped?
And that's the question that keeps this theory alive.
Then we reach my favorite category, mind control.
Of course, it's your favourite.
Some chemtrail believers think chemicals are being released to alter human behavior, reduce aggression, increase obedience, lower intelligence, and suppress critical thinking.
If that program exists, it's doing a terrible job. Have you been online recently? Can I just point something out? Every conspiracy eventually follows the exact same path. Stage 1, the government.
Classic.
Stage 2, the weather. And stage 3, mind control.
Obviously.
And if you stay in the rabbit hole long enough, aliens, every single time.
You're telling me that aren't aliens involved?
I'm saying we've discussed aircraft condensation for 20 minutes, and somehow we're already one step away from reptilian diplomats from Alpha Centauri. It's time for evidence now.
Finally, my moment has arrived.
You sound far too excited.
For the next 20 minutes, I am no longer your co-host. I am the leader prosecutor in the case of the people versus the sky.
God help us all.
This is probably the single most common argument made by chemtrail believers. You'll hear it everywhere. My grandfather was a pilot. I've been watching the skies for 50 years, and when I was a kid, planes never left trails like this.
The argument basically boils down to, I don't remember this happening.
Believers say modern aircraft leave trails that linger for hours, not minutes, hours. They spread out, they grow wider. Sometimes they seem to merge together and form a hazy blanket across the sky.
And to be fair, we've all seen that.
Exactly. And that's why this argument resonates. People aren't imagining the trails. The trails are genuinely there. The disagreement is about what causes them.
Scientists point to atmospheric conditions, basically saying that under the right conditions, contrails can persist for a very long time.
Believers fire back with, then why didn't we see this years ago?
To which historians put out photographs from World War II showing enormous persistent contrails hanging over Europe, which is adamantly inconvenient for Team Chemtrails. Nothing ruins a conspiracy theory quite like photographic evidence from 80 years ago.
Although some would argue those photographs only prove persistent trails existed, not that today's trails are identical.
And that's the challenge with this conspiracy. Every answer creates another question.
Now let's talk about the thing that makes everyone stop and stare. The grids.
They do look weird. Imagine looking up and seeing lines crossing the sky, north to south, east to west. Perfect intersections, perfect spacing. Sometimes it generally looks like somebody is drawing on the atmosphere with a giant invisible ruler. which adamantly does look suspicious if you've never thought about how aircraft routes work.
Believers say these patterns are deliberate, aerial spraying grids, carefully planned dispersal routes, covering entire regions.
Scientists say planes travel along established air corridors. Those routes intersect. The Earth rotates and the atmosphere moves, and eventually you get giant crisscrossing patterns.
Which is a sensible explanation.
Thank you.
But let's be honest, even when you know the explanation, it still looks creepy.
I agree. If aliens wanted to fake a chemtrail conspiracy, they'd start by drawing giant X's over Birmingham.
Exactly. The visual evidence is powerful because our brains love patterns. And when we see giant geometric shapes in nature, we instinctively think somebody put them there.
To be fair, if I woke up tomorrow and saw Hello Luke written across the sky, I'd become a believer immediately.
You'd be on a podcast by lunchtime.
We're already on a podcast.
Well, good point. You'd be on a second podcast. Now we move on to what many believers consider the smoking gun, the barrel photographs.
Yes, the pictures that appear every single time chemtrails are discussed online.
If you've never seen them, imagine the inside of an aircraft. Rows of large metal tanks, pipes, cables, equipment. The whole thing looks like something from a James Bond film.
Or a mobile moonshine operation.
Believers point to these images and say, why would a plane need giant tanks unless it was spraying something?
Reasonable question.
The photos spread across forums, documentaries, YouTube videos, and social media. For many people, this was the moment chemtrails felt real, because now they appeared to be physical evidence.
Except when aviation engineers looked at the photographs.
They identified many of them as testing aircrafts.
Aircraft manufacturers often install water-filled ballast tanks during flight testing. They're used to simulate passenger weight and cargo loads.
In other words, not secret chemtrails, just engineering.
The least exciting explanation imaginable.
But here's the thing. Once a photograph enters conspiracy culture, the original explanation often gets lost. People share the image, not the context.
And suddenly a test aircraft becomes evidence of a global spraying program.
So let's review the case. Exhibit A. Trails that seem to last longer than expected.
Scientists say weather, believers say chemicals.
Exhibit B. Massive grid patterns across the sky.
Scientists say flight routes, believers say spraying routes.
Exhibit C. Aircraft filled with mysterious tanks.
Scientists say testing equipment, believers say caught red-handed.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I rest my case.
You haven't proved anything.
But I've definitely made things weirder. And that's what makes chemtrails fascinating. The evidence isn't convincing enough to settle the argument, but it's intriguing enough to keep the argument alive.
However, the next part of this story is where things get generally uncomfortable, right? Up until now, we've been talking about claims, photos, patterns, suspicious-looking skies, internet rabbit holes.
But now we arrive at the reason chemtrails refuse to die, because buried underneath the conspiracy theory, there are some real stuff.
Dangerous words.
No, seriously. This is the section where every chemtrail believer starts pointing aggressively at the screen and shouting, "See? I told you!"
And every scientist starts developing a stress headache.
Let's start with Vietnam. The Vietnam War is raging. American military planners come up with a fascinating idea. What if they could use the weather as a weapon?
Project was called Operation Popeye. This isn't a theory, this happened. Documented, verified, declassified, real. The objective was simple. Extend the monsoon season. Create more rain, turn roads into mud. Disrupt troop movements, slow enemy supply lines. Which is one of those moments where history casually drops something insane and moves on.
The military used cloud seeding techniques to encourage rainfall, and according to reports, the program ran for years.
So the government generally tried controlling the weather once and was surprised people became suspicious.
This is one of the strongest foundations underneath modern chemtrail theories, because believers look at Operation Popeye and say, if they tried it then, Why wouldn't they try it now?
And that's where the argument begins.
Now let's talk about cloud seeding, because this is where things get really interesting and really confusing.
Mainly because cloud seeding sounds exactly like something conspiracy theorists would invent. Except it's real. Governments have done it. Private companies do it. Scientists openly discuss it. Nobody's hiding it.
Cloud seeding involves introducing particles into the clouds, most commonly silver iodide. The goal is to encourage moisture to form around those particles, which can potentially increase rain or snowfall under the right conditions.
In simple terms, scientists are basically trying to convince clouds to get on with it.
Exactly. Clouds are standing around doing nothing. Scientists show up and say, "Come on, lads, rain already."
Weather peer pressure.
Cloud seeding has been used in various countries around the world.
Here's the important distinction. Cloud seeding is not the same thing as chemtrails. Cloud seeding is openly acknowledged, limited in scope, and generally targeted at specific weather systems, whereas chemtrail theories involve secret global spraying operations affecting entire populations.
But you can see how people might connect the dots, especially if you're already suspicious. And now we enter the part of the episode that makes everybody uncomfortable, because this is where conspiracy theorists start rubbing their hands together. Geoengineering, the science of deliberately altering aspects of Earth's climate.
The phrase itself sounds like it should have dramatic music behind it. Researchers have discussed various ideas. Some of them sound like science fiction, some sound like supervillain plans, and some sound surprisingly reasonable.
One proposal involves reflecting a small amount of sunlight away from Earth. The idea is to reduce warming.
Which sounds simple until you realize we're discussing modifying the entire planet.
Another proposal involves releasing reflective particles into the upper atmosphere, essentially mimicking the cooling effects sometimes seen after large volcanic eruptions.
And if you're a chemtrail believer, you just sat up very quickly. Because suddenly, scientists are openly discussing putting particles into the atmosphere, which sounds alarmingly close to what chemtrail believers have been shouting about for decades.
Researchers, of course, stress there is a huge difference. Most geoengineering concepts remain theoretical, heavily debated, or limited to research discussions. They are not evidence of secret global spraying programs.
So, chemtrail believers may have accidentally wandered into a real conversation but then sprinted 3 miles past it.
That's probably the most accurate summary of the entire topic. And this is where things become fascinating, because most conspiracy theories collapse completely when you start digging.
Flat Earth, gone. Moon made of cheese, devastatingly disproven. But chemtrails are different, because the theory exists next to several real things. Weather modification, cloud seeding, military weather experiments, geoengineering discussions.
And that's why this theory survives. Because every time someone says governments would never alter the atmosphere, someone else can point to Operation Popeye, or cloud seeding, or geoengineering proposals, and say, actually.
So, here's where we stand. Chemtrail believers claim aircraft are secretly spraying chemicals over populations. Scientists reject those claims. But history confirms governments have experimented with weather modification, and modern scientists are actively discussing ways humans might deliberately influence the climate. Which leaves us with a question. If chemtrails aren't real, why are so many people convinced they are?
And that's exactly where we're heading next.
So let's assume for a second that chemtrails aren't real, just hypothetically. Why are millions of people still talking about them?
Because this isn't really a story about airplanes. It's a story about trust.
Oh, good, we're getting philosophical.
Think about it. Most of us have absolutely no idea what happens 35,000 feet above our heads. We don't fly the planes. We don't study atmospheric science. We don't work for governments. We're asked to trust experts. And for a lot of people, me included, that's becoming harder and harder. Let's start with the obvious. The sky looks weird. You see strange trails stretching across the horizon. Weather patterns seem more extreme than they used to. Then you remember all the times governments have hidden things from the public. And suddenly, your brain starts connecting dots.
Even if the dots don't actually belong together, humans are pattern finding machines. It's one of our greatest strengths and occasionally our greatest weakness. We'd rather believe there's a hidden explanation than accept that sometimes the world is messy and complicated.
A secret plan feels more satisfying than randomness, even when the secret plan is terrifying.
Now, enter the internet, the greatest invention in human history. And also the reason your uncle thinks pigeons are government drones.
The internet changed everything because conspiracy theories used to spread slowly. You'd hear them from a friend, a late night radio host, a bloke in a pub who definitely knew a guy.
Now, somebody uploads a dramatic video with ominous music and millions of people can watch it before breakfast. Science often sounds like this. We examined the evidence and here's the most likely explanation. Whereas conspiracy theories sound like, what if everything you've ever been told is a lie? One of those definitely gets more clicks.
A scientific explanation closes the mystery. A conspiracy theory keeps the mystery alive. And human beings love mysteries.
Then came COVID. And suddenly, trust in institutions became one of the biggest arguments on Earth.
The pandemic didn't create chemtrail theories, but it definitely gave them fresh fuel.
People were already rightfully debating vaccines, government policies, medical advice, media coverage, scientific experts. Everything became a trust issue.
And once people start questioning one official narrative, they often start questioning others.
It's basically conspiracy cross-training.
Entire online communities formed around distrust in institutions. And those communities didn't just discuss COVID, they discussed everything: vaccines, secret societies, weather control, you name it.
It's like every conspiracy theory got invited to the same family reunion, and suddenly chemtrails found a brand new audience. But you know what's funny? After all this research, I don't think chemtrails survive because of evidence. I think they survive because they sit in a perfect sweet spot. There's enough weird stuff in the sky to make people curious, enough government secrecy in history to create suspicion, enough real weather modification projects to make the theory feel plausible, and enough uncertainty for nobody to completely let it go.
That's actually a really good point.
Thank you. Mark the date. It may never happen again.
Chemtrails exist in that uncomfortable space between that's ridiculous and okay, but what if?
And that's the exact place where conspiracy theories thrive.
So, whether you think chemtrails are a genuine secret program or one giant misunderstanding that's spiraled out of control, the theory isn't disappearing anytime soon. Right. Now we enter the part of the story where things stop being purely theoretical and start becoming legislative.
Ah, yes, my favorite genre. Conspiracy theory meets government paperwork. Because while scientists and aviation agencies consistently say there is no evidence supporting chemtrail claims, the idea has not stayed on the internet. It's now crept into politics.
In recent years, some US state level discussions and bills have referenced concerns about atmospheric spraying and weather modification, usually framed around geoengineering, environmental impact, or atmospheric intervention transparency. But in conspiracy circles, this gets interpreted very differently.
Very differently, meaning they finally admitted it.
Exactly. Same document, two completely different realities.
On one side, let's study climate intervention carefully and transparently. On the other side, the sky is full of chemicals and we were right all along.
And that gap between interpretation is where the entire chemtrail debate lives. Scientific agencies and atmospheric researchers continue to state there is no evidence of a secret large-scale spraying program. Contrails are explained through well-understood physics. Weather modifications exists, but it is limited, localized, and openly discussed.
But the nuance never survives contact with the internet.
No, because nuance is a terrible content.
Exactly. Nobody shares. Complex atmospheric variables influence condensation and altitude. They share. Look up.
So here's where it gets weird. On one hand, official bodies say chemtrails are not a real phenomenon. And on the other hand, politicians are sometimes talking about weather modification, geoengineering, atmospheric intervention, and climate manipulation frameworks, which creates a paradox because even when the intent is environmental regulation, it can sound to certain audiences like confirmation.
So the government's message becomes we are not spraying chemicals in the sky. And simultaneously, we are discussing how to manage what's in the sky.
And for conspiracy thinking, those two statements collide into they're definitely spraying something.
I think the real problem here is communication, because one side is speaking in policy language and the other side is speaking in an apocalypse TikTok captions.
That's actually painfully accurate.
You've got regulatory frameworks for atmospheric research versus why is the sky not blue anymore and who owns the clouds?
And the internet will always pick the second one. What makes chemtrails different from many other conspiracies is that it occasionally brushes up against real policy discussions, even when those discussions are unrelated. They get absorbed into the narrative.
It's like conspiracy theory osmosis. A small amount of real science leaks into the system, and the conspiracy expands to fill the shape of it.
So we end up in this bizarre situation. Governments deny secret spraying programs. Governments regulate environmental science. Scientists explain contrails. The internet interprets everything as evidence.
And somewhere in the middle is a plane just trying to get to Barcelona,
Probably delayed.
probably blamed for mind control.
And that's the political twist. Not proof, not debunking, just contradiction. Because chemtrails don't survive on evidence, they survive on confusion. And confusion is one thing politics, science, and the internet all manage to create without even trying. So, whether you're looking up at the sky or looking down at the legislation, you'll always find the same thing questions and no simple answers.
Right, this is it. The moment of truth. After all the skies, the trails, the barrels, the governments, the weather, the mind control, and the mild existential crisis, we've arrived at Conspiracy Corner.
Where reality gets voted on.
Against its will.
Let's start with the most boring possibility. Theory 1 is simple. No secret program, no chemicals, no hidden agenda, just aircraft doing what aircraft always does.
Contrails. Persistent contrails under the right atmospheric conditions. Humidity, temperature, air pressure, physics.
And a lot of people looking up, seeing something unfamiliar, and assuming it must be something more complicated.
Which is very human, but very unmysterious.
Then the internet arrives. Old observations get reinterpreted. Photos get shared without context, and suddenly a normal atmospheric effect becomes a global conspiracy.
So basically, weather plus anxiety plus internet equals chemtrails.
Pretty much. Now we move into the uncomfortable middle ground.
My least favorite zone where things are sort of real.
This theory suggests something different happened. Not a secret spraying program, but a confusion of multiple real world activities cloud seeding, military weather experiments, geoengineering research, all of which exist in some form, all of which involve human interacting with the atmosphere, all of which sound, when stripped of context, extremely suspicious.
And then people connect dots that were never meant to be connected. One cloud seeding project here, one declassified military experiment there, a few academic papers about aerosol reflection, and suddenly the brain builds a single narrative. They're doing something up there.
Right. And now we enter the main event. Theory 3. A secret global atmospheric spraying program.
Of course, because if you're going to do a conspiracy, you might as well go for worldwide aircraft coordination without leaks. And the argument goes, it's so secret, that's why there's no proof, which is always a convenient feature of the theory.
Now, I will defend it.
Of course you will.
If such a program existed, it would likely be hidden in plain sight, embedded within legitimate aviation systems, mixed with normal contrails, disguised as routine activity.
So, we've reached If it's impossible to prove, it must be better hidden.
And the strength of this theory isn't the evidence, it's imagination.
That's not reassuring. So, let me get this straight. We've got option 1, physics. Option 2, confusion. And option 3, every airline in the world secretly coordinating atmospheric spraying without a single confirmed leak.
Yes,
And people think the third one is the most likely.
some do.
I need to lie down, possibly in a different century.
And that's the point. Not to pick a winner, but to show how the same sky can produce three completely different realities depend on who's looking at it.
One sky, 3 narratives, infinite arguments, and somewhere above all of it, planes just keep flying. Honestly, they deserve a medal.
Or at least hazard pay.
So, what's the truth?
The truth is probably boring,
Of course it is.
but the story is everything. And that's chemtrails. So whether you end up watching contrails, cloud seeding, geoengineering debates, or just looking up at the normal blue sky,
You're still looking at the same atmosphere, just with different stories projected onto it.
and maybe that's the real chemtrail, not what is in the sky, but what we think we see in it. We'll leave you with that.
Try not to stare too long at planes, it never ends well.
Good night.
And look up responsibly. Remember to follow us for more deep dives like this one, where you end up leaving more confused than when you arrived.
Recommend our show to a friend, and as always, thank you for listening to our rants and different points of view. Next week, we are going to get into the Mayan civilization.
That's one of Jess's favourites, as she loves to say that the world ended in 2012 because of their calendar.
That's right, and once you see the proof, you can't unsee it. It might need to be another two-parter, guys, so buckle up.
And as always, stay safe, stay suspicious.
And we will be back next week. Bye.
Bye.